Authority without humility becomes a mirror, reflecting only the fears of the one who wields it. What happens when someone with power chooses pride over perspective? Let us know in the comments section below, and make sure to subscribe to follow this journey of identity, justice, and truth. License and registration, Officer Mark Colton said with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. He didn't need to ask. The white SUV had barely pulled into the parking spot when he was already stepping out of his cruiser, thumbs tucked into his belt like he was ready to draw. He didn't see a violation. He saw a situation. More specifically, he saw a woman alone at a gas station near his beat on the edge of rural Midland, South Carolina, driving a federal-looking vehicle with government tags and tinted windows. He didn't like what he didn't recognize, and when Mark Colton didn't like something, he stopped it. She didn't respond immediately. That was his first mistake. He took her silence as defiance. "Ma'am," he said, louder, dipping his sunglasses to let her see his narrowed eyes. "I asked for your license and registration." Emily Reeves looked up from her phone, one brow arched in a way that said more than any words could. She was still seated behind the wheel, engine off, her military shoe duffel in the passenger seat, and a lanyard peeking from the glove box that Colton didn't notice. "Yet, I'm not under suspicion for anything," she said calmly. Her voice was clear, controlled, not overly polite but not hostile either. "So, unless I'm being detained—" "Oh, you're being detained," Colton snapped, cutting her off before she could finish, refusing to comply with a lawful order from an officer of the law. Her eyes didn't flicker. That irritated him more than it should have. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. She didn't move, didn't panic. She simply reached into the center console, slow and deliberate. Colton's hand flew to his holster. "Whoa! Hands where I can see them?" Emily paused, hands still inside the compartment. She met his eyes. "I'm reaching for my badge." "I didn't ask for a badge," he spat. "I asked for ID." She nodded slowly, her fingers curling around the leather case before she drew it out, opening it with one hand and holding it through the driver's window without a word. Colton took it, looked at it, laughed. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No," she said. "It's federal." He scoffed and flipped it closed without even reading the lettering across the gold seal. "Anyone can print a badge these days. You can buy 'em online. Hell, kids wear them for Halloween." Emily's jaw tensed. She stepped out of the car now, slow and deliberate, every motion precise. The duffel was zipped shut, the car door left open behind her. She stood to her full height, not towering, but tall enough. Her boots hit the pavement with a thud that sounded like discipline. Colton raised an eyebrow. "What branch?" "You didn't ask," she said, "but Army Intelligence." He grinned. "And I'm CIA." She remained still. There was a stillness about her that unnerved him. Not the kind that came from fear. It was something else, something earned. "You're awfully calm for someone being questioned," he said, stepping closer now, posture puffed. Emily didn't flinch. "That's because I've been questioned by people a lot scarier than you." He paused. Something about the way she said it made his gut tighten. He glanced back at her badge, then at the SUV again. It was unmarked but pristine, federal in a way you had to know to recognize. Colton didn't know. That made him angry. "I'll have to verify this," he said, nodding toward the badge again. "You'll stay right here while I make a few calls." "You do that," she said quietly. He turned on his heel, walking toward his cruiser, already punching numbers into his phone. But Emily wasn't watching him anymore. Her eyes had shifted to the gas station windows, where a clerk was watching with growing concern. A teenage boy had also paused his soda refill, phone in hand, recording. Emily didn't acknowledge them. She simply returned to her vehicle, leaned on the doorframe, and waited. From his squad car, Colton's voice carried back through the open window. "Yeah, got a woman here claiming she's Army Intel. Reeves. Emily Reeves. Says she's with some kind of interagency thing. Yeah. No, not in uniform, civilian clothes. Yeah. No, won't say what she's doing here. Silence. Then, from inside the cruiser, "Wait, Chisu." Emily heard the pause, a long one, then the shuffle of movement. She didn't move. She didn't need to. Officer Colton emerged moments later, the radio still crackling. His walk was slower now. The smirk was gone. But Emily didn't look at him. She was watching the clerk instead, who had just pulled out his own phone and started dialing. She knew the signs. She'd trained others to look for them. Panic, fear, uncertainty. Colton stopped a few feet from her. "There seems to have been a misunderstanding," he said, not quite meeting her gaze. She didn't respond. "I was doing my job," he continued. "You were acting suspicious." Still, she said nothing. The air was tight. A new vehicle pulled into the lot. Black SUV, government plates. 2 men in suits stepped out. Homeland. One of them spotted her immediately. "Captain Reeves?" he called, voice respectful. "We've been waiting." Colton's mouth went dry. Emily finally turned to him, not with anger, not with satisfaction, but with silence. That was worse. Silence had weight when it came from someone who'd earned it. She gave him one final nod, tiny, clinical, and walked past him without another word. Dalton stood there, red blooming across his cheeks, the sound of the teenage boy's phone still recording behind him. And he knew, somewhere deep in his gut, this wasn't going to stay quiet. And she knew, just as deeply, this wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning. The ride into downtown Columbia was quiet but not tense. Emily Reeves didn't need noise to fill the space. After everything she'd seen and done, silence was a familiar ally, one that spoke volumes when others failed to listen. The Homeland agents in the front seat didn't try to make conversation, didn't pester her with questions. They knew better. People like Emily didn't talk to fill time. They talked when it mattered. She watched the familiar landscape pass by through the tinted window. This wasn't home, not really, but she knew these roads like muscle memory. The city had been one of her stomping grounds during transition periods, between deployments, between missions, between identities. It was where she'd learned to live among civilians again, how to walk into a grocery store without scanning for exits, how to sleep without her boots on. And yet, all it had taken was one man in a uniform to remind her how fragile that peace really was. At the corner of Gervais and Assembly, the SUV made a sharp left, heading toward a nondescript federal building sandwiched between a shuttered bookstore and a brick cafe. To the casual eye, it looked abandoned. Inside, it was anything but. As the vehicle rolled to a stop, Agent Mercado turned slightly in his seat and gave her a nod. No need for words. She returned the nod, opened her door, and stepped out into the shaded alleyway behind the building. Security scanned her in seconds. Fingerprint, retinal, badge confirmation. The woman at the desk offered a quiet "ma'am" as she passed through, which Emily acknowledged with the same restrained dignity she'd learned to carry like armor. Inside the secured briefing room, a half-dozen people were already seated, all in plain clothes, all carrying the weight of serious jobs. No one rose when she entered, but a subtle shift in posture told her they knew who she was, or knew enough. She took her seat. Second chair from the left, facing the center of the U-shaped table. No one spoke. That was part of it. The room hummed with unspoken purpose. She set her bag down, slid out a notepad, and waited. A man with steel-gray hair and eyes like black coffee entered moments later and broke the silence. "Captain Reeves," he said without introduction. "You had an encounter this morning." Emily didn't flinch. "Yes, sir." He didn't sit. "Details?" "Local officer approached me without cause at a gas station outside Midland. Claimed I was suspicious. Demanded ID. Dismissed my federal badge, escalated to detainment. I cooperated within reason. Name of the officer? Mark Tolton. There was a subtle shift in the air. One of the agents across the table clicked a pen. Another flipped a page in their binder. Do you believe it was racially motivated? She met the gray-haired man's eyes. I believe it was ego-driven. A pause, then a nod. Good. Stick to that phrasing. The agency will handle the rest. Emily didn't nod. She didn't have to. She knew how these things played out. Paper trails, controlled language, press statements if necessary. She wasn't here to fight on Twitter. She was here to do her job. The briefing proceeded. Targets. Incel drops. Cyber cross-referencing with Border Patrol anomalies. It was all business. But the echo of the morning's encounter lingered in her mind. Not because it hurt, but because it reminded her that respect was still something people had to prove when they didn't look or act the part others expected. After the briefing concluded, Agent Mercado caught up with her in the hallway. You handled that better than most would have. Emily gave a short laugh. I've been shot at in 4 languages. One guy with a badge doesn't rattle me. You want us to issue a formal complaint? No. Her tone was firm. Not yet. Let's see where it goes. He raised an eyebrow. You planning to do something? I'm planning to watch, she said. People show you who they are when they think no one's looking. Mercado gave a half smile. Just be careful. Not everyone around here likes being made to look stupid. She didn't respond, because if there was one thing Emily Reeves knew how to do, it was handle stupid, especially when it dressed itself up in authority. Later that evening, back in her hotel room, she finally sat down. The weight of the day pressed into her shoulders, but not heavily. She was used to carrying more. Her duffel bag lay unopened at the foot of the bed. Her Glock was field-stripped and cleaned on the table beside her. Old habits. She never slept without knowing where her weapon was. She scrolled through her phone, checking headlines. And there it was. A grainy video from the gas station. 30 seconds of footage posted to a local Facebook page by a teenager named Kellen Ward. Cop freaks out on federal agent thinking she's faking it. Y'all, this was wild. The video had just crossed 2,000 shares. Local comment threads were already boiling. Some were the usual defenders. He was just doing his job. But others were calling it for what it was. You can tell she's legit just by how calm she is. That guy was shook when backup arrived. This woman needs to speak up. We need more people like her. Emily tossed the phone onto the bed and sighed. It wasn't the attention that bothered her. It was the false sense of resolution people always clung to. Viral didn't mean vindicated. The door buzzed once. A short chime, not loud. She rose immediately, checked the peephole. Lana Fisher, the gas station clerk, stood outside, wringing her hands. Emily opened the door cautiously. Miss Reeves? Lana asked, her voice small but urgent. I'm sorry, I know this is weird. I just had to find you. I saw the video going around. That cop? He came back after you left. Emily's expression changed. What? I was real angry. Tried to get the footage deleted. Said it was a security breach. But I didn't take it down. I saved it. Sent a copy to someone I trust. Emily opened the door wider. Come inside. Lana stepped in. Her hands were trembling. I don't know what he's planning, but you should be careful. He didn't look like he was going to let this go. Emily nodded, her mind already working through contingencies. Thank you for telling me. Lana nodded. My brother was in the Marines. Said people like y'all shouldn't have to deal with this kind of crap. I saw what happened. I saw how you handled it. That guy, he doesn't speak for the rest of us. Emily gave her a small smile. Not forced, not rehearsed. He'd never did. Lana left a few minutes later after giving her the USB backup of the video. Emily stood alone in the room, holding it between her fingers like it was heavier than it looked. Not because she needed proof, but because people like Colton always made the mistake of thinking no one was watching. And sometimes the quietest people were the ones who hit hardest when the time was right. She slid the USB into her laptop, saved the file, and leaned back in her chair. This wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. The scent of burnt coffee and disinfectant hung in the air like regret inside the Midland Police Department. Mark Colton sat behind his desk, staring at the swirling cursor on his computer screen. He hadn't slept much the night before. Couldn't. Not after the way those suits had shown up and taken over like he was some rookie mall cop with a plastic badge. The woman hadn't raised her voice, hadn't even looked rattled. That's what got under his skin. She made him feel irrelevant. And now the fallout was beginning. He tapped his fingers on the desk, jaw clenched as he clicked through the online chatter. The video was everywhere. He'd tried to get it scrubbed, called in a favor to the station's tech guy who laughed in his face and said, "That thing's viral, man. You can't stuff the genie back in the bottle." He could feel his control slipping. What little authority he'd carved out in this town, the respect, the deference, was being chipped away by a 4-minute clip and a woman who said nothing and still dismantled him in front of half the state. And now Internal Affairs wanted a meeting. He shoved back from the desk and stood pacing like a caged animal. It wasn't supposed to go like this. He'd been with Midland PD for 9 years. He trained the rookies. He gave safety talks at the middle school. He knew every inch of this town better than anyone. These out-of-town feds didn't know how things worked here, but neither did she. He didn't know what bothered him more, the fact that she had actual credentials or the fact that she never once tried to flaunt them. She hadn't yelled, hadn't even threatened legal action. She'd just been better. And somehow that was worse. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He picked it up. The voice on the other end was low, crisp. "You're the officer from the Midland video." "Not a question." "Who is this?" "You're going to receive a subpoena within the next 48 hours. You're being reviewed for misconduct and abuse of authority. This conversation is not recorded, and this is not a formal notice. Consider it a courtesy." Click. Mark stared at the phone, knuckles going white. This wasn't just noise anymore. It was action. He slammed the phone down and stormed out of the office, nearly knocking over Officer Ramirez on the way out. "Everything okay, sir?" He didn't answer, just pushed through the doors and stepped outside into the dry heat, letting the sun stab into his eyes like it owed him something. Across town, Emily sat in the small back booth of a diner called Patty's, the kind of place where the coffee was always on and the waitresses knew when to talk and when to leave you alone. She had a manila envelope spread out on the table in front of her. Notes, incident reports, and screen captures from the video, marked and annotated with military precision. The waitress, a woman in her 60s named June, poured her a refill without asking. "Anything else, hon?" Emily looked up, her expression unreadable. "Not right now, thank you." June gave her a soft smile and walked off, leaving Emily with her thoughts and the faint clatter of dishes behind the counter. Her phone vibrated once. A message from Mercado. "Local PD's rattled. Colton's circling the drain. Want me to release the supplemental file." Emily stared at the text for a long moment, then typed, "Not yet. Let it fester." She closed the envelope and leaned back in the booth, letting herself scan the room casually. At the far corner, someone she recognized walked in. "Lana." Emily waved her over. Lana slid into the booth, nervously clutching her tote bag like it held something more than receipts and gum wrappers. "I did something," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Emily didn't respond, just waited. "I sent the video to my cousin. He works with one of those legal defense groups for veterans. I didn't mean to stir things up, but you did the right thing." Lana blinked. "Really?" "Yeah." The girl looked relieved, but also conflicted. I just didn't want it to get buried. He came back to the station again today. Asked if I still had the footage. I told him I gave it to my manager. But he looked mad. Not loud mad, quiet mad. The kind where someone's planning something. Emily nodded slowly. Be careful, she said. He knows who you are now, and he's got something to prove. I'm not scared of him, Lana said, but her hands said otherwise. You should be, Emily replied. Fear keeps you alive, but it doesn't mean you back down. Lana stared at her like she was hearing truth for the first time. They parted a few minutes later. Emily slid her notes back into the envelope and paid her tab with a crisp 20. No tip left on the table, because she handed it directly to June with a quiet thank you and a look that said it wasn't just for the coffee. Later that night, Mercado called. Change of plans, he said. He filed a complaint against you. Claims you impersonated a federal agent, despite the verification. Says your badge was suspect and that you resisted his commands. Emily didn't even blink. Let him dig. Mercado sighed. You really want to go to war with this guy? I've gone to war for a lot less. There was a pause on the line. Well, for what it's worth, he said. Your record's clean. Medal citations, letters from previous directors, a bronze star with V. I don't need the resume read to me, she said. No, he agreed. But he will. Emily hung up. By morning, the news had changed tone. The story was no longer cop stops woman at gas station. It had become decorated veteran wrongfully detained by local officer. Someone had leaked her record. She hadn't. Maybe Mercado, maybe someone else watching the story unfold. The tide was shifting, and in the court of public opinion, Mark Colton was starting to drown. What Emily knew, but he didn't yet, was that the truth wasn't just coming. It was already here. It just hadn't knocked on his door yet. But it always did. The knock came at 8:17 a.m. sharp. Mark Colton opened the door in his uniform shirt, still buttoning the cuffs, irritation etched into every line of his face. He hadn't had his coffee. He hadn't even had a decent night's sleep. When he saw the two men on the porch, both in suits, both wearing the clipped expressions of people with authority, his pulse did something strange. Officer Mark Colton, the taller one asked. Yeah. Who's asking? We're with the Office of Inspector General, the other man replied, lifting a badge with practiced ease. You've been named in a formal federal misconduct investigation. We're here to serve notice and collect your initial statement. Mark blinked. You serious? The taller agent handed him a folder. Read it. He opened it, scanned the first few lines. Department of Homeland Security, Section 722 Review, Recommendation for Temporary Suspension. You can't be serious, he muttered. This is because of some video? Some woman with a fake badge? The taller agent didn't flinch. That woman holds a Tier 1 clearance. She has more confirmed operations than anyone in this district has arrests. You escalated without cause. You dismissed identification from a federally protected officer. You drew a weapon without threat. And it's all on video, multiple angles. I was doing my job, he snapped. She wasn't cooperating. She had an attitude. The agent raised an eyebrow. Having an attitude is not a federal crime? Mark's mouth opened, but no words came out. The reality was sinking in now. This wasn't a slap on the wrist. This was official. I need a lawyer, he said finally. That would be wise. They left, without further comment. He closed the door slowly, eyes unfocused, heart hammering. 1,000 versions of the event replayed in his mind, but none of them changed the fact that the world had already made up its mind. That afternoon, the mayor held a press conference. It wasn't just about Mark, it was about the department, about perception, about responsibility. The mayor was clear. The town supported its police, but it also supported truth. And truth had a name: Emily Reeves. Across the street from the courthouse, Emily stood behind a wall of microphones. She hadn't wanted to be here, she hated being the story, but when the press insisted, and when Mercado encouraged her to take the mic, she'd agreed. Not to vindicate herself, to speak for every veteran who come back and been met with suspicion instead of gratitude, every woman questioned for daring to speak with confidence, every person who'd ever had their truth laughed at by someone too insecure to hear it. She adjusted the mic once and began. My name is Captain Emily Reeves. I served 16 years in Army intelligence. I don't need to list my deployments or medals. That's not why I'm here. I'm here because one morning, on the way to do my job, I was treated like a threat. Not because I was acting suspiciously, not because I posed any danger, but because someone saw me, and they didn't see authority. They didn't see service. They saw a problem. She looked up at the sea of faces watching her. I didn't come to make this about me, but I do want to remind people, service doesn't always come in the form you expect. It doesn't wear one face. It doesn't come in one gender or one color or one background. Veterans don't stop serving just because we take off the uniform. Sometimes we're just grabbing coffee. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. And sometimes, when you laugh in the wrong face, the country gets to see what real strength looks like. When she stepped back, there was no applause. Not right away. There'd a single clap. Then another. Until the courtyard erupted. Lana stood at the back of the crowd, holding up her phone, tears shining in her eyes. She wasn't the only one. A group of local veterans, many of whom had come forward in recent days, lined the sidewalk behind her. American Legion hats, ball caps with faded service patches, quiet eyes full of pride. Later that evening, Emily returned to Patty's Diner. It was quieter now. The regulars nodded at her with a little more reverence, a little more understanding. June poured her a fresh cup without saying a word and gave her a small paper bag on the side. What's this? Lana baked you something, said it was her grandma's recipe, apple crumble. Emily smiled. She took her usual booth and watched the sun melt across the horizon through the dusty window. For the first time in days, she let herself relax. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mercado. Colton placed on administrative leave. Town council backing new training initiative. They're naming it after you. She stared at the screen for a long time, then typed back, Tell them to name it after someone else. Name it after Lana. There was no reply, just the quiet satisfaction of knowing it had landed. Outside, a child pointed at her from across the parking lot. His father leaned down and whispered something in his ear, and the boy's eyes lit up. He waved. Emily raised her cup in silent salute, because that's what this was really about. Not the badge, not the uniform, but the moments where people chose to see, really see, what someone had given up for them, the invisible weight of sacrifice carried into gas stations, diners, back alleys, and courtrooms. The kind of respect you couldn't demand, only earn. And sometimes it took a laugh in your face to remind the world exactly who you were. She sipped her coffee. Outside, the lights of the diner glowed brighter as night fell. Inside, Emily Reeves stayed seated, with her back to the wall, both exits in view. Old habits. But now, she was watching for something else. Hope. And this time, it wasn't hard to find.